Today we look at the first superhero team to ever grace the pages of a comic book, the Justice Society of America.
Debuting in late 1940, the group consisted of several of DC's major superheroes, such as The Flash, Green Lantern, Dr. Fate, Mr. Terrific, and the Spectre. Although DC's iconic Trinity weren't really featured in the group's adventures that much. Batman and Superman were only part-timers, while Wonder Woman would serve as the team's secretary.
While casual sexism in the 1940s aside, the book remained popular until its cancellation in 1951. And the team would eventually fade a little bit, but would make a few appearances here and there throughout the next decades, often crossing over with the Justice League of America.
The team would return to a regular publishing schedule in early 1976. This incarnation was notable in the sense that they actually acknowledged the character's age, with several members having gray hair and wrinkles. This is also where popular characters Power Girl and the Huntress would debut.
Then, in 1999, a new incarnation of the JSA appeared. This one would act more like a superheroic legacy organization, with new heroes assuming the mantles of heroes that had either passed away or just plain retired. One of the people behind this series would be Hollywood filmmaker David Goyer, the man responsible for things like this, and unfortunately this.
This incarnation is being led by Sand, who is the former sidekick of the original Sandman, and has the ability to transform himself into, well, sand. Other members include Jay Garrick, the original Flash, Alan Scott, the original Green Lantern.
Yeah, I am aware that at this point Alan Scott was actually going by the name Sentinel and not Green Lantern, but the fact of the matter is most people know him as the original Green Lantern, and not too long after this he would reassume the identity of Green Lantern, so I'm just going to call him Green Lantern.
Getting back to the team, we have Mr. Terrific, a former Olympian turned technology magnate who extols the virtue of fair play. Wildcat, a former professional boxer who's aided in the training of heroes like Batman and Black Canary. Speaking of which, we have the longtime hero Black Canary. There's Dr. Midnight, a blind surgeon who has the ability to detect various images on the infrared spectrum. Kendra Saunders, aka Hawkgirl, granddaughter of DC super spy Speed Saunders and cousin twice removed of the original Hawkgirl. And rounding things out, we have the Star-Spangled Kid, who assumed the mantle after discovering her stepfather was the sidekick of the original Star-Spangled Kid.
I know that it seems like I'm nutshelling a lot of these characters, but the fact of the matter is, if I tried to get so in-depth on each and every one, this video would be like 3 hours long. But there is one character we do have to really get into, and that is the titular returnee, Hawkman. And I do have to warn you, it gets a tad confusing.
The original Hawkman was Carter Hall, an Egyptologist who discovered he was actually the reincarnation of the pharaoh Khufu. He also discovered that Khufu's queen, Chayara, had been reincarnated as a woman named Shaira Saunders. Carter and Shaira would go on to fight crime as Hawkman and Hawkgirl. Then in the 1950s, the character got a science fiction reimagining like many of DC's heroes. This time he was Qatar Hall, detective from the planet Thanagar. Qatar and his partner, later wife, Shaira, utilized a Thanagarian element called nth metal in their wing harnesses and weapons. Not too long after the Crisis on Infinite Earths event, Carter Hall, Shaira Hall, and Qatar Hall merged with the Thanagarian god and apparently died in the process.
And that leads us into JSA, Return of Hawkman. Which Hawkman is returning? Reincarnated Egyptian monarch? Alien police detective? Avatar of a raptor deity? Well, let's find out.
Across the country, people are being killed in the blink of an eye within seconds of each other. Elsewhere in New York City, Dr. Midnight and Black Canary are out on a date when they are approached by a man who begins harassing Canary about her ex, the, at the time, deceased Green Arrow. The two JSA members are then hit with a hypersonic frequency being emitted by the man. It turns out he is longtime Green Arrow villain, Count Vertigo. Meanwhile, at a nearby movie theater, Sand and Wildcat are taking in a screening of Raging Bull when they get jumped by two villains named Geomancer and Killer Wasp. Back at JSA headquarters, news of the lightning-fast murders begins to filter in. Jay Garrick realizes that it's his old college professor, Edward Claris. Claris had been able to recreate the accident that gave Jay his super speed. Claris dubbed himself Rival and turned to crime. However, Jay was eventually able to run Rival so hard that the character wound up being absorbed into the Speed Force.
Basically, the Speed Force binds and unites the speedsters of the DC Universe. In particular, the many people who have assumed the mantle of the Flash.
Mr. Terrific is able to chart the location of the next murder, and it turns out to be the Garrick residence. Jay races off to protect his wife Joan. The remaining JSA members then get distress calls from Midnight and Sand. They then start to depart, only to be interrupted by the sudden arrival of Lady Shiva, Tigress, and Icicle. It appears the Injustice Society has reformed.
The Injustice Society is an ever-changing group of supervillains who often fight the Justice Society. I really can't elaborate too much more than that.
It's then the security system at the JSA's headquarters causes all the doors to lock. This turns out to be the work of a cybernetic entity known as the Thinker. Tigress then pulls out a gun and shoots Green Lantern with a bullet made from the evil tree, Blackbriar Thorn.
Yeah, the original Green Lantern Alan Scott had a weakness to wood, which is possibly the dumbest weakness in all of superhero comics. And before a bunch of you jump on me about how the other incarnations of the Green Lantern have a weakness to the color yellow, there's at least an explanation given for that. There really isn't for Alan Scott and his wood allergy.
As Terrific, Star-Spangled Kid, and Hawkgirl get Green Lantern to a secure room, Jay manages to head Rival off before the killer can get to Joan. Meanwhile, Midnight and Canary prepare to take on Vertigo, and Sand gets double-teamed by Geomancer and Wasp as Wildcat gets taken out by another villain, Black Adam.
Black Adam is actually the first champion of the Wizard Shazam, and he operated in ancient Egypt under the name Teth Adam. Unfortunately, the power went to Adam's head and he got corrupted by it. This resulted in Shazam stripping Adam of the powers and encasing the powers in a magic scarab. Hundreds of years later, an archaeologist named Theo Adam discovered the scarab and was able to tap into the Black Adam persona. He then proceeded to kill the parents of Billy Batson, who you would know as Captain Marvel. Before the events of this story, Black Adam was recently separated from Theo Adam.
Black Adam takes Wildcat up into the stratosphere, preventing escape, and begins explaining things. It turns out the one behind this is a villain named Johnny Sorrow who wishes to unleash an entity known as the King of Tears. Now, Black Adam actually wants to help take Sorrow out. Elsewhere, the JSA begins to turn the tide. Jay Garrick manages to take out Rival by knocking the killer back into the Speed Force and somehow stealing part of Rival's speed in the process. Hawkgirl takes down Tigress after somehow tapping into a hidden power, while Star-Spangled Kid manages to take down Icicle and Shiva. This enables Terrific to rush Green Lantern to a hospital. Canary and Midnight take down Vertigo as Sand arrives. Vertigo tells the trio about Sorrow and gives the villain's location at the home of Louis Sendak, a former hero known as the Scarab. Upon arrival, they find Sorrow has bound Sendak, intent on turning the old man into a portal for the King of Tears. Midnight charges at Sorrow, the villain then rips off his mask. The mere exposure of Sorrow's face is enough to apparently kill Dr. Midnight. The sight of a triumphant Sorrow placing his mask back on and injecting Louis Sendak with a formula that will turn the former hero into a portal causes Sand to flash back to his days as Sandy the Golden Boy, back when the JSA first fought Johnny Sorrow. Sorrow, a silent film star who failed to make the transition to talkies, had recently acquired a device that allowed him to teleport through a dimensional subspace. During one of Sorrow's teleports, Sandy took aim with a grappling hook gun and fired. The grapple managed to hit Sorrow's device, causing the former actor to be sucked into the alternate dimension. For the next 6 months, Sandy was haunted by nightmares of the incident. It was then that Sorrow returned and abducted the young sidekick. The JSA arrived to rescue Sandy just as Sorrow unleashed the King of Tears. It was then that the Spectre arrived and absorbed the entity. However, the creature's lack of a soul caused the Spectre a great deal of distress. The spirit of vengeance began to weep, the tears containing the essence of the King of Tears. The JSA was able to collect the tears and store them. However, Johnny Sorrow managed to track down one of the vials, and that is what he injected into Louis Sendak. Meanwhile, Canary does her best to revive Dr. Midnight. It turns out that due to his blindness, Midnight did not actually see Sorrow's face, and thus he is alright. It's then that Jay Garrick arrives with help in the form of Jakeem Thunder.
Jakeem Thunder is a man who possesses a magical pen that contains a pan-dimensional wish-granting djinn known as the Thunderbolt. Thunderbolt used to be in possession of a hero named Johnny Thunder, who unfortunately at this point is suffering from the later stages of Alzheimer's disease.
It's then that the other JSA members begin to arrive, with Hawkgirl repeatedly asking where Carter is. It's then that Wildcat and Black Adam also arrive with the Spectre. Unfortunately, the King of Tears managed to overwhelm the Spectre, leaving only a skeleton behind. The Spectre does begin to reform, while the rest of the JSA begins concocting a backup plan. Black Adam and Jay Garrick begin running around the King of Tears. Jay then manages to gain control of Adam's speed, and this causes Jay to reach light speed. Meanwhile, Midnight manages to demonstrate something to Sorrow. Midnight's spectacles have the ability to act as a recording device. Midnight shows Sorrow the footage of the villain's own face, and the resulting energy burst is enough to take out both Sorrow and the King of Tears. In the aftermath, the rest of the JSA notices that Jay is missing. In reality, Jay is still running. When he finally manages to come to a stop, he finds himself standing in the middle of a desert. It's then that he's greeted by the Egyptian ruler Khufu, his trusted spiritual advisor Nabu, and Teth Adam.
The soul of Khufu's trusted cleric Nabu would come to possess an ancient helmet that would be discovered by an archaeologist named Kent Nelson. Nelson would use the power stored within the helmet to assume the mantle of Dr. Fate. Eventually, the title of Dr. Fate passed down to a man named Hector Hall. Hall used to be a member of a team called Infinity Inc. under the identity of the Silver Scarab, though this is unrelated to Louis Sendak. But if you haven't made the connection already, Hector Hall is the son of Carter and Shira Hall, the original Hawkman and Hawkgirl.
Back in the present, the rest of the JSA is cleaning up debris from the battle, while Sand is dealing with Black Adam, who wants to join the JSA. Sand isn't too sure, pointing out that even though Adam helped with Sorrow, he's still not entirely trustworthy. Adam tries to turn some brownie points by pointing out that Jay will soon return. Sand excuses himself to visit with Kendra, Hawkgirl, and she's been acting strange, referring to Midnight and Black Adam by previous identities and continuously talking about Carter. Sand has also noticed some slash marks on Kendra's wrists. Angry over what she believes Sand is implying, Kendra storms off. While she stews, Kendra goes for a flight. It's then that she winds up bumping into Zariel.
The angel Zariel fell from heaven after he fell in love with a woman. After that, he briefly served as a member of the JLA.
Kendra begins to open up to Zariel. He is an angel after all. She explains that she took the death of her parents pretty hard. In fact, on 2 separate occasions, she tried to commit suicide. After the second attempt a little over a year ago, she has been plagued by bizarre nightmares. Zariel points something out. Kendra's soul is much older than it seems to be, and especially due to her physical age. He then posits that the second suicide attempt may have been more effective than she thought, and the real Kendra Saunders is dead. As this is happening, Sam manages to track down Kendra's grandfather, Speed Saunders. Speed confirms that Kendra briefly was pronounced dead after the second attempt. It was then that she was somehow revived. When she came to, Kendra's eyes, which had previously been green, were now brown. It was then that Speed realized the soul of Shira Hall was now in possession of Kendra's body. So if Shira was now back, Carter couldn't be too far behind.
Meanwhile, back in ancient Egypt... Whoa, there's a transition I never thought I'd make.
Anyway, back in ancient Egypt, Khufu fills Jay in on the situation. Jay's arrival had been foretold by Nabu, and Khufu had been told that Jay would be needed to help something out in the future. Khufu takes Jay into a tomb to reveal something that Khufu had found in the desert. Khufu had discovered a crashed spaceship from the planet Thanagar. Khufu explains the ship's pilot died not too long after the crash, and they were only able to understand the last word she uttered. Nth metal. Teth Adam then moved the craft to the tomb. Eventually, Khufu managed to isolate the nth metal contained within the spaceship, and the metal granted the many secrets, including Khufu and Nabu having the power of flight. Nabu tells Jay that he foresaw a battle on the planet Thanagar in which the reincarnated souls of Khufu and Shira would play a major part. Jay is then presented with an nth metal weapon called the Claw of Horus. Jay and Teth Adam then set about recreating the circumstances that brought Jay back into the past. Jay and Adam run alongside each other until Jay manages to take Teth Adam's speed and begins to return home. Back in the present, Kendra vehemently denies the idea that she is Shayera reincarnate. She storms away from Zariel and heads to the grave of her parents. There, Sand and the rest of the JSA meet up with her. Sand offers to help Kendra, but she rejects it. Kendra flies off again with Black Adam in pursuit. Just as he apparently catches her, Kendra is mysteriously teleported away. This coincides with Jay's return from ancient Egypt. Jay explains that he knows where Kendra is, and the others need to make preparations. Hawkman is coming back. Kendra arrives in a cave surrounded by a group of priests. The priests have summoned her to the planet Thanagar to overthrow a tyrant named Onamar Sin, who is now in control of the majority of the planet's supply of nth metal. The group is then attacked by the Dark Wingmen, Sin's army of mindless corpses. One of the priests gets Kendra some weapons, and with them she manages to fight off a few of the Wingmen. Sadly, not before they make off with the priest who helped her. The priest is then turned into one of the Wingmen by Sin. Back on Earth, the JSA pays a visit to Dr. Fate, who is doting over his comatose wife in the hospital.
Yeah, I should explain something here. I kinda skipped over a couple of subplots. One involving Dr. Fate and his comatose wife, Lita, and the other involving a character named Atom Smasher, who I'll explain a bit more on later. The reason I did this was because, one, the Dr. Fate storyline kinda popped up right in the middle of the fight with the King of Tears, and I felt it interrupted the narrative flow. And the Atom Smasher part, well, that really had more to do with events that took place in the previous JSA trade, and nothing to do with this story, so it just didn't add anything to it.
Though reluctant to leave his wife, Fate decides to help the JSA members get to Thanagar. A few of the team members do stay back, though, namely Midnight, in order to check on Fate's wife, Star-Spangled Kid, her mother just went into labor, and Green Lantern, who's still recovering from being shot by an evil piece of wood. However, the team does get some much-needed help in the form of Atom Smasher.
Atom Smasher started out as the hero Nucleon, and he is the godson of Al Pratt, who is the original Atom. He has the ability to alter the size and density of his body.
Atom Smasher objects to Black Adam being on the team, and the two begin to argue, but Jay points out that they have no choice. Adam was prophesied as being part of the battle as well. Dr. Fate then opens a portal to transport the team to Thanagar, and they leave Earth. Back on Thanagar, the remaining priests take Kendra deeper into the cave, where they reveal a portal to the spirit world. They explain that since she's the reincarnation of Shayera Hall, Kendra can act as a beacon of sorts to bring Carter Hall back to life. The JSA arrive on Thanagar and begin making their way towards Kendra just as she slowly reaches into the portal. A hand then reaches out to grab her. She pulls back as Carter Hall, Hawkman, is reunited with his long-lost love. Kendra tries to explain that she's not exactly who Carter thinks she is, but Hawkman says that he feels Shayera's presence inside her. Before anything can happen, though, the JSA arrives and Carter greets his old friends, the new heroes, and finally has a tearful reunion with his son. It's then that the Thanagarian priest steps forward, and Carter explains that he knows the situation as he still possesses the memories of Kadar Hol. Jay presents Carter with the Claw of Horus, and the JSA set forth to take down Sin's forces. The JSA promptly get their butts kicked. Fate is hit with a spell that renders him mute. Jay and Mr. Terrific are quickly taken out. Atom Smasher gets swallowed by a giant lizard creature. Hawkgirl keeps denying Hawkman while the two are being overwhelmed by the Dark Wingman. Black Adam gets knocked into orbit, and Sand winds up having his body scattered into the wind.
No, I am not going to make a Dust in the Wind by Kansas joke.
Carter, Kendra, Jay, Fate, and Terrific are taken hostage aboard Sin's flying fortress. It's then that Kendra snaps at Carter, pointing out that he really doesn't know anything about her, and to drop this whole eternal love shtick.
Well, I guess it turns out that telling a girl that you're reincarnated ancient Egyptian royalty and thus meant to be together forever doesn't work as well as it did in the 1940s. Who knew?
Kendra then lashes out at the rest of the JSA because, well, she really hasn't had anyone care about her or to care about in a long time. It's then that Sin arrives and takes Carter and Kendra out to the edge of his fortress without their nth metal wing harnesses. Sin then has the two tossed over the side. As they fall, Carter asks Kendra if she trusts him. She says yes, while Carter breaks free of the ropes. Carter then manages to catch one of the Dark Wingmen and break its neck. Carter then takes the Wingman's harness and catches Kendra just before she hits the ground. The two manage to take out another Wingman and use the suits to sneak back onto the fortress. Along the way, Kendra mentions her battle with Tigress, and Carter explains that what happened was a psychic backlash from the memories stored in her nth metal wings. Back in the holding cell, Terrific is able to find a weak point in the wall, and Jay then vibrates through it. This provides a means for escape for everyone. Hawkman and Hawkgirl are detected as they sneak back onto the fortress, but before Sin can strike, he finds himself blinded by a sudden sandstorm. It's Sand, who has managed to reform his body. Then, an undigested Atom Smasher bursts out of the creature who swallowed him. It's at that point that Black Adam returns and stabs Sin through the face. This doesn't kill Sin, though, as he begins to merge with the planet Thanagar himself. Hawkman takes Hawkgirl up into the air. He tells her that they can manipulate the nth metal inside Sin. He takes Kendra's hand and begins kissing her. The psychic backlash from both is enough to destroy Sin. Afterwards, Kendra tells Carter that while she can't say she hated the kiss, she still has a lot of personal issues she needs to sort out, and she would just like some space. Carter reluctantly acquiesces. The team returns to Earth, and as he adjusts back to real life, Carter wonders what place the JSA really has in a world already with the GLA and the Teen Titans. Jay points out that while the average Joes look up to the JLA and the Titans for guidance, the JLA and the Titans look to the JSA to keep them in check.
Okay, I'll do it. Who watches the Watchmen? And that reference brings JSA The Return of Hawkman to an end. How was it? It's pretty darn good. There is some really strong characterization throughout this book. The artwork is consistent, even though it's actually done by multiple artists. And even though Hawkman would eventually get his own ongoing series spinning out of this, the real breakout character is Black Adam. Black Adam would become a major player in the JSA and in storylines like Villains United, Infinite Crisis, and 52. Now, that being said, there are a few drawbacks. Like I said, those plot cul-de-sacs in the middle of the story really interrupt the narrative flow. They're jarring. They just feel kind of out of place. Also, the Thanagarians as characters are pretty one note. Also, the layout of the pages when we are jumping in between Kendra finding out about her past and Jay's adventures in ancient Egypt, it's really kind of confusing at times. That being said, this book is set up so that if you weren't entirely familiar with the JSA, you can pick it up and read it and understand everything. And I know I didn't touch on a lot of the characters like Mr. Terrific, Star Spangled Kid, Dr. Midnight, and Black Canary, and Wildcat. But trust me, we will tackle further JSA stories in the future. I will get into those characters when need be. And because of that, I am going to give JSA, The Return of Hawkman, a B. And with that, let's see what we'll be doing next time on the Random Trade Review. Got two here.